After a harrowing battle to prove my adversary was a danger, I finally secured sole legal and physical custody, rebuilding a quiet, safe life for my son. It's been 1 week since the judge's gavel came down and my world finally stopped spinning. For the last 4 months, my life has been a blur of legal documents, hushed phone calls with my lawyer, and sleepless nights where I'd sit by my son's crib, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest, making a silent promise to get him through this. And now, it's over. The final unappealable court order is framed not on the wall, but in my mind. Sole legal and physical custody. Those 6 words cost me everything I thought I had, but they gave me back the only thing that truly mattered, my son. My name is Austin Hill. I'm 34 years old, and as of a week ago, I am the only parent my 2-year-old son, Leo, legally has. We live at 15 Maple Drive in the house I bought 5 years ago, with money my grandfather left me a year before I even met the woman who would become my wife and then my adversary. The court was very clear on that point. This house is a premarital asset. It is my sanctuary. It is Leo's home. It is not and never will be again hers. The quiet in this house is a brand new language I'm still learning. It's not the tense, brittle silence that hung in the air for months before I filed for divorce. That was a silence filled with unspoken accusations and the tapping of her fingers on a keyboard connecting with a world I wasn't a part of. This new quiet is different. It's a soft quiet, punctuated by the happy squeal of a toddler chasing the cat, the gentle asterisk, thump, thump, thump asterisk of his favorite blue ball rolling down the hallway, the soft hum of the baby monitor on the kitchen counter. It's the quiet of routine, of safety, of a life being carefully, painstakingly rebuilt. Tonight, Leo went to sleep without a fight. A small victory, but after the war I've just been through, I'll take it. I've checked on him twice already. His little body is curled up around a stuffed giraffe, his breathing deep and even. He's safe. As I stand here in the living room, surrounded by the colorful chaos of his toys, the sheer bone-deep exhaustion of the last year hits me like a physical wave. It's a heavy leaden feeling in my limbs, a fog in my brain. It's the cumulative weight of fighting for your child's future while trying to keep his world as normal as possible. It's the exhaustion of having to prove in meticulous, excruciating detail that the woman you once loved had become a danger to your own child. People don't understand. They hear custody battle and they imagine 2 angry parents tearing each other apart out of spite. They picture screaming matches and slammed doors. Mine wasn't like that. It was quiet, methodical, and born from a single moment of absolute soul-crushing terror. A moment seared into my memory like a brand. It's the memory that fueled me through every deposition, every court filing, every time I had to hand my son over for a supervised visit and watch him look back at me with confused eyes. It was 5 months ago. Leo was 19 months old, just starting to string 2 words together, toddling around with that determined, wobbly gait that is both hilarious and heart-stopping. I was supposed to be at a client dinner, but the client canceled at the last minute. I remember feeling a spark of joy. An unexpected evening at home. I could help with bath time, read Leo a story. Simple things. I pulled into the driveway just as the sun was setting. The house looked dark, too quiet. My wife, Sarah, was working from home full-time, so she should have been there. I walked in the front door calling her name. "Sarah, honey, I'm home early." Silence. A prickle of unease ran up my spine. I called her name again, louder. Still nothing. The house felt unnervingly still, and then I heard it, a faint, reedy sound from upstairs. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding. The sound grew louder with every step. It wasn't the sound of a fussy baby. It was the sound of pure distress. A desperate, hopeless, exhausted cry that was cracking and hoarse. It was the sound of a child who had been screaming for a very long time. I burst into Leo's room and the sight broke my heart. My son was standing in his crib, his face bright red and streaked with tears. He was soaked through, clutching the wooden bars with his tiny fist shaking. When he saw me, his crying hitched into a desperate, gasping sob, and he reached his arms out. "Dada, Dada." I scooped him out, holding him tight, my mind racing. Where was Sarah? Had something happened? No, her car was in the driveway. I carried Leo downstairs, checking every room. Then I saw it. A sliver of light from under the home office door. The door was closed, locked. I ran to the door, still holding my sobbing son, and banged on it with my free hand. "Sarah, open the door!" No response. but I could hear something through the wood, a cheerful, amplified corporate seminar voice. I rattled the doorknob, yelling her name. Finally, I heard the click of the lock. The door opened, and there she was. Sarah, my 32-year-old wife, stood there looking annoyed. She had a sleek pair of noise-canceling headphones around her neck. On the computer screen behind her, a woman was gesturing emphatically in front of a logo I'd come to despise, a stylized tree with the words Independent Matriarchs Alliance. It was some kind of live-streamed empowerment seminar. Sarah looked from my face to our crying son, and her expression wasn't one of panic or guilt. It was irritation. "What?" she said, her voice sharp. "I'm in the middle of a seminar. You're not supposed to be home." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean, what?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "Leo, have you even checked on him? He's been screaming his head off. How could you not hear him?" She gestured to the headphones. "I had these on," she said, as if that explained everything. "It was a leadership module. I had to be fully focused." In that moment, the man who had been her husband died, and the man who was only Leo's father was born. I looked at the digital clock on her desk. I had been home for 15 minutes. The forensic report from the private investigator I hired a week later would show that she had been logged into that seminar in that locked room with those headphones on for over an hour. My 19-month-old son had been alone, terrified and screaming for anyone, while his mother sat 20 feet away, deliberately tuning him out to listen to strangers on the internet. That memory is the bedrock of my resolve. It's the answer to any question. Why did you fight so hard? Why couldn't you agree to joint custody? Because a mother who would lock a door between herself and her crying child isn't a mother. She's a liability. The Independent Matriarchs Alliance. This group she found online when she was struggling with what I now know was untreated postpartum depression hadn't empowered her. It had consumed her. It had convinced her that our family was a cage and her son was a distraction from her true purpose. So I fought. For 4 agonizing months, I documented everything. I hired the best lawyer I could afford. I hired a private investigator. And I won. I didn't win a prize. I won a responsibility. The sole responsibility for this little boy sleeping peacefully upstairs. Standing here now in the quiet of my home, the exhaustion feels a little less like a burden and a little more like peace. A hard-won, fragile peace. The legal threats are gone. The constant fear for my son's safety is gone. It's just us now, me and Leo. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure this house, this world I've built for him, is the safest place on earth. Nothing and no one will ever threaten that again. I made a promise to my son, and I intend to keep it. The silence that followed the judge's final ruling was the most profound quiet I had ever known. For 7 days, that quiet had been my sanctuary. It was the sound of safety. It was the gentle hum of the refrigerator, the soft padding of my 2-year-old son Leo's feet on the hardwood floors, the whisper of the wind in the big maple tree out front. It was the sound of a life finally blessedly free from chaos. Every night after I put Leo to bed, I'd sit in the living room of my house at 15 Maple Drive and let the peace wash over me. This house, which I'd bought with my inheritance a full year before I even married Sarah, had been declared my sole premarital asset. More than that, it was our fortress. And for the first time in a long time, the walls felt secure. That 7th evening, I was on the floor in the living room, building a lopsided tower of blocks with Leo. He was giggling, a pure, happy sound that had become the soundtrack of my new life. He'd place a block look at me for approval, and my heart would swell. This was it. This was the victory. Not a courtroom win, but this simple, perfect moment. The tower wobbled, and Leo let out a squeal of delight as it tumbled down. He clapped his little hands, and I was just about to start rebuilding when the sound came. A sharp, insistent banging on the front door. It wasn't a friendly knock. It was a frantic, demanding summons that shattered the quiet like a rock through a stained glass window. Leo flinched, his smile vanishing. He looked up at me, his big brown eyes wide with confusion and a flicker of fear. My entire body went rigid. I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone who was on the other side of that door. There was only one person in the world who would hammer on my door with that kind of entitled rage. "It's okay, buddy," I said, my voice a low, steady murmur that I didn't feel at all. "Daddy's got it. You stay here and guard the blocks." I walked to the front door, my heart pounding a heavy drum against my ribs. Through the peephole, my worst fear was confirmed. It was Sarah, my 32-year-old ex-wife. She looked wild. Her hair was a mess, her face was flushed, and her eyes had a manic gleam I recognized all too well. It was the same look she'd had during the worst of our arguments, the look that said logic had left the building and only raw emotion remained. I took a deep breath. Before I did anything else, I walked to the small table in the entryway. Tucked inside a manila folder was a freshly printed copy of the final custody order. My lawyer had warned me this might happen. People with a persecution complex don't respect court orders, he'd said. They see them as another form of attack. I pulled the stapled document out. It felt heavy in my hand like a shield. Then I opened the door, but only as far as the chain lock would allow. A 6-inch gap of cold evening air separated us. "Sarah," I said, my voice level, "you can't be here." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't you Sarah me, Austin. Open this door. I'm here to see my son." "Our son is fine," I replied, keeping my body positioned so she couldn't see past me. I didn't want Leo to see her like this. "But you know the terms. You are not allowed on this property. Our next exchange is in 2 weeks at the Supervised Visitation Center." I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, but it was instantly swallowed by her ideology. The Independent Matriarchs Alliance had taught her that any rule set by a man or by a court system run by men was inherently illegitimate. "I don't recognize the authority of a corrupt patriarchal court." She spat the words a pre-rehearsed script. "That piece of paper means nothing. I am Leo's mother. You have no right to keep him from me. Now open this door before I have you arrested for kidnapping." The sheer absurdity of that statement almost made me laugh. I was his legal and physical guardian, standing in my own home, protecting him from a person the court had deemed a danger. But I didn't laugh. I held up the papers. "This is the court order, Sarah," I said calmly. "The one you were present for. It says you are not to come within 500 feet of this residence. You are trespassing. I'm asking you one last time to please leave." "No!" she shrieked, throwing her shoulder against the door and rattling the chain. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet house. Behind me, I heard Leo let out a frightened whimper. That was it. The father in me completely eclipsed the man who had ever loved this woman. My only priority was the little boy in the living room. "You are scaring our son, Sarah," I said, my voice dropping to a warning. "Leave now." "It's not over until I have my baby," she screamed, her voice cracking. She started hammering on the door again, this time with the flat of her palm. "You stole him. You poisoned the judge against me. You can't do this. I'm a good mother." A good mother. The words hung in the air, so grotesquely false they felt like a physical blow. I thought of my 19-month-old son screaming alone in his crib while she wore noise-canceling headphones for a seminar just feet away. I thought of her missing his first birthday for a leadership retreat. I thought of the thousands from our joint account she'd funneled into her organization, money that should have gone to Leo's college fund. "No, Sarah," I said, my voice now as cold as steel. "You're not. A judge, a social worker, and a court-appointed psychologist all agreed. You gave up your right to be a mother when you chose them over him." Her face contorted into a mask of fury. She backed away from the door, pulling out her phone. She was going live. She aimed the camera at her own face, then panned to my front door. "I'm here," she said, her voice taking on a tearful, performative quality. "I'm at the house my abusive ex stole from me, and he won't let me see my baby. He's kidnapped my son, Leo. He's using the system to punish me for being a strong woman. To all my sisters in the Alliance, I need your help. He's at 15 Maple Drive. He's holding my son hostage." My blood turned to ice. She had just doxed us. She had broadcast my address to a group of radicalized strangers who believed she was a grieving widow, and I was a monster. I closed the door, slid the deadbolt, and leaned my forehead against the cool wood. The shield of the court order suddenly felt very thin. Her screaming from the lawn was now punctuated by sobs for the audience on her phone, not from any genuine grief. I walked quickly back into the living room. Leo was huddled by the couch, his face buried in a cushion, his small body trembling. I scooped him up and held him tight, whispering, "It's okay, little man. It's just noise. Daddy's here. You're safe." He clung to me, his arms wrapped around my neck like a vice. As I held my terrified son, I knew I had no other choice. This wasn't a domestic dispute anymore. This was a calculated attack. She had brought her online war to my front door. I carried Leo upstairs to his room, turned on his music box that played a soft version of "You Are My Sunshine," and sat with him until his trembling subsided. Once he was distracted by his favorite train set, I went into my bedroom, locked the door, and took out my phone. My hands were still shaking, but my resolve was firm. She had brought danger to my child's home. I dialed 911. When the operator answered, my voice was a recording of the man I had been forced to become calm, factual, and resolute. "Hello," I said clearly. "I need to report a trespasser at 15 Maple Drive." "Okay, sir, is the person known to you?" "Yes," I said, the word tasting like ash. "It's my ex-wife, Sarah Hill. Is she being violent? Are you in immediate danger?" "She is not physically violent, but she is causing a disturbance and refusing to leave. I have a final court order stating she is not permitted at this residence. She is in direct violation of that order." "Okay, sir. We're dispatching a unit. Please stay inside and do not engage with her." "I won't," I said. "Thank you." I hung up and walked to my bedroom window. Sarah was still out there, pacing the lawn like a caged animal, phone in hand, delivering her monologue to her digital army. She was painting a picture of a desperate mother, but I knew the truth. I was looking at a fanatic who had sacrificed her own child on the altar of a twisted ideology. She wasn't a victim. She was the architect of her own misery, and she was trying to burn my son's world down with her. Within 10 minutes, an approaching siren broke the quiet. A police cruiser pulled up its lights, painting streaks across my neighbors' houses. I saw curtains twitching across the street. This public spectacle was exactly what she wanted. Two officers got out. They approached Sarah, who immediately launched into her performance, pointing at my house, her voice thick with fake tears. I saw one of the officers, a woman with a stern but patient expression, hold up a hand to stop her. I went back downstairs, grabbed the court order, and walked out the front door. I kept my distance from Sarah and approached the male officer. "Good evening, officer," I said, holding out the document. "I'm Austin Hill. I called. This is the court order I referenced, page 3, section 4, paragraph B." He took the papers and scanned the page with his flashlight. He nodded slowly, then handed them to his partner. She read them as well. They exchanged a look of professional understanding. They had seen this before. The female officer turned to Sarah, her voice firm. "Ma'am, you are in violation of a court order. You are on private property and have been asked to leave. You need to come with us." Sarah's jaw dropped. This was not how her movie was supposed to go. "What? You're taking his side?" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "He's the criminal. He's kidnapped my son." "Ma'am," the officer said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "We have a legally binding document. You have an opinion. Right now, the document is what matters. You can take your complaints to the judge Monday morning. Tonight, you are leaving, either in the back of our car or on your own, 2 feet. Your choice." For a moment, I thought she was going to fight them. But as she looked at the two stoic officers and then at me standing calmly on my own porch, a sliver of reality seemed to pierce her delusion. She was powerless here. Defeated, she spat on the lawn in my direction. "This isn't over, Austin," she hissed. She turned, stomped to her car, and peeled away from the curb, leaving only the flashing lights of the police cruiser in her wake. The officers gave me back my court order. "You did the right thing, Mr. Hill," the male officer said. "If she comes back, call us immediately." I thanked them and they left. The street returned to its quiet stillness. I went back inside and locked the door, leaning against it as the adrenaline finally drained away, leaving a profound weariness in its place. I had protected my son. I had defended our home. But it wasn't a victory. It was just a battle. And as I listened to the silence that once again filled my house, I knew with a terrifying certainty that my ex-wife had just declared a whole new kind of war. My prediction came true faster and more brutally than I could have imagined. The war Sarah declared wasn't going to be fought in a courtroom with rules and evidence. It was going to be fought in the court of public opinion with lies as ammunition. The very next morning, my phone started buzzing. Then it didn't stop. It was a deluge of notifications from social media, emails from addresses I didn't recognize, and texts from unknown numbers. It was a digital tidal wave of pure hatred, and it was all orchestrated by the Independent Matriarchs Alliance. Sarah, or rather Sadie Vance, had posted a heavily edited video of her confrontation with the police. She'd filmed herself on the lawn crying with our house looming in the background. She cut out the part where the officers explained she was violating a court order. Instead, she spun a tale of a heroic single mother, a grieving widow being denied access to her child by a cruel, abusive ex-boyfriend. She never called me her husband. She couldn't. In her world, her husband was dead. I was just some monster who had appeared out of nowhere to steal her son. The IMA blasted the video across all their platforms. Their followers, thousands of them, descended like a swarm of locusts. My name, my photo, and my profession were plastered everywhere. I was a monster, a kidnapper, a man who got his kicks from tormenting a poor grieving mother. The comments were vile. They called for me to lose my job. They wished horrible things upon me. Some of them mentioned Leo by name. That's when the fear turned into ice in my veins. Within 48 hours, the online harassment spilled into the real world. Our home address, 15 Maple Drive, was leaked. The first time a car slowed down unnaturally out front, I dismissed it. The second time, I paid attention. By the third time, I was closing all the blinds and making sure the doors were double locked. They weren't just driving by, they were taking pictures. Sometimes someone would lay on their horn as they passed. It was a campaign of psychological intimidation, designed to make me feel unsafe in my own home, the one place I was supposed to be able to protect my son. Leo was only too young to understand the words, but he could feel the tension. He could feel his father's anxiety. He'd look up at me with his big innocent eyes, and I'd force a smile trying to shield him from the ugliness that was pressing in on us from all sides. We played in the backyard instead of the front. I stopped taking him for walks around the neighborhood. Our world, our sanctuary, was shrinking. The breaking point came during Sarah's next scheduled supervised visitation. It was at a sterile, neutral facility monitored by a court-appointed professional. I dropped Leo off my stomach in knots and waited in the car. An hour later, I went back in to pick him up. The supervisor, a woman in her 50s named Carol, asked to speak with me privately, while Leo was given a picture book. Her expression was grim. "Mr. Hill," she began, her voice low, "I have to document everything that happens during these visits. Today, Sarah spent a significant portion of the time trying to coach Leo." My blood ran cold. "Coach him? What do you mean?" "She kept trying to get him to repeat phrases," Carol explained, looking at her notes. Things like, "I'm sad at Daddy's house," and "I miss Mommy." Leo is only 24 months old. He mostly just repeated "Mommy," but her intent was unmistakable. She was trying to manipulate him into making statements that could be used against you. It was deeply inappropriate. It's all in my report. I felt a surge of white-hot anger, but it was quickly replaced by a chilling clarity. This was it. This was the piece I needed. Sarah wasn't just slandering me online anymore. She wasn't just harassing me. She was actively trying to harm our son emotionally and using him as a pawn in her sick game. She had crossed a line from which there was no coming back. That night, after putting Leo to bed, I called my lawyer. I told him everything. The online campaign, the doxing the cars, and finally the supervisor's report. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Austin," he finally said, his voice hard as steel. "They've given us the opening. The IMA's public campaign against you is defamation, libel, and targeted harassment. They've made a fatal mistake. It's time to stop playing defense." The next day, my lawyer sent a formal cease and desist letter via courier and certified email to the entire board of directors of the Independent Matriarchs Alliance. It wasn't a plea, it was a legal broadside. It detailed the harassment campaign, the doxing, and the emotional distress they had caused. It stated our intent to sue the organization into oblivion for defamation. But that was just the opening salvo. The real payload was in the attachments. My lawyer had successfully petitioned the family court judge to unseal specific evidence from our case for the sole purpose of defending me against this public attack. Attached to that letter was the digital forensics report compiled by my private investigator. Attachment: a certified copy of the fraudulent death certificate for Austin Hill, submitted by Sarah Jensen Hill as part of her IMA application. Attachment B: a certified copy of our marriage certificate dated 2 years before her application, proving she was legally married at the time she claimed to be a widow. Attachment C: a collection of authenticated screenshots from the IMA's private forums showing their star member, Sadie Vance, posting emotional tributes mourning the death of her beloved husband, while simultaneously cashing my paychecks. The letter concluded with a simple, devastating paragraph. It explained that their organization, a registered nonprofit, had its entire existence predicated on a charter that strictly forbade membership to married individuals. Their most celebrated member, the poster child for their cause, was a fraud. Her membership was obtained through criminal misrepresentation, and their public crusade on her behalf was based on a foundation of lies. By promoting her story, they had made themselves complicit in her fraud. This act put their precious federal grant eligibility and nonprofit status in immediate and severe jeopardy. We gave them 24 hours to respond. We didn't have to wait that long. The fallout was nuclear. Within 12 hours, the entire online campaign against me vanished. Every post, every video, every hateful comment was scrubbed from the internet. The IMA's main website was replaced with a stark single page. On it was a formal public apology. It was addressed to me, Austin Hill by name. It stated that their organization had been misled by a member who had joined under false pretenses, and that they deeply regretted the distress their recent campaign had caused. They retracted every single allegation they had made against me. Then my lawyer received a direct email from the IMA's legal counsel. It included a statement confirming that Sarah Hill, also known as Sadie Vance, had been permanently expelled from their organization. They acknowledged that her membership was based on fraudulent documents and that they would cooperate fully with any further legal proceedings. Just like that, Sarah's entire support system, the cult she had sacrificed her husband and son for, had publicly disowned her. They threw her under the bus to save themselves, and in doing so, they handed me the final weapon I needed to protect my son for good. Armed with the police report from the trespassing incident, the IMA's own public apology admitting to the harassment campaign, and Carol's damning report from the supervised visit, my lawyer filed for an emergency hearing. We weren't just asking for a slap on the wrist. We were filing for a permanent restraining order and the immediate suspension of all visitation rights. We stood before the same judge who had presided over our divorce. She had read everything. When Sarah tried to speak to spin her story of being a victim, the judge cut her off. "Miss Hill," the judge said, her voice echoing in the quiet courtroom, "your behavior since my ruling has been nothing short of appalling. You violated a court order. You engaged in a malicious campaign of public harassment against Mr. Hill. And most disturbingly, you attempted to emotionally manipulate your own 2-year-old child. This court's primary and only concern is the well-being of Leo Hill. Your actions have proven that you are currently a direct threat to that well-being." The judge's gavel came down with a crack that felt like the end of the world. Sarah's visitation rights were suspended indefinitely. A mandatory comprehensive psychological evaluation was ordered before she could even petition the court to see her son again. A permanent restraining order was granted. She was legally barred from coming within 500 feet of me, my home at 15 Maple Drive or Leo's daycare. It was over. The war was finally over. Tonight the house is quiet. Not the tense listening quiet of the past few weeks, but a deep, peaceful silence. The blinds are open. The online noise has ceased. There are no more cars slowing down out front. There are no more threats. There is only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the gentle sound of my son breathing through the baby monitor on the end table. I'm sitting in the living room watching him sleep on the screen. A few minutes ago, we were on the floor building a tower of blocks. He laughed a pure, beautiful sound that filled the entire room and knocked it all down. In that moment, there was no custody battle, no court orders, no online mobs. There was just a father and his son safe in their home. My victory isn't in Sarah's defeat. I take no joy in her collapse, only a profound sadness for the person she used to be. My victory is this quiet moment. It's the silence. It's the safety. It's the knowledge that tomorrow morning, my son will wake up in a home free from chaos and fear, and his future will be stable and secure. It was a long, brutal fight, but looking at that monitor, at my sleeping boy, I know without a single doubt that it was worth it.